So we're on to the what if part 2 of report cards, and I may even go on to a third and fourth part. We'll see. We'll see where this goes. This is important. I feel it's a really important. And
yes, it is.
So in part 1, I talked about, I told you the story about Madame Denis and these special report card that I told you the example of where she talked about Sienna saving the anthill, and each report card had a little story, and I...
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, and she would do it even around, mathematics. I remember reading this, and it was something, it was like a story, it was like bringing to life Sienna's learning. Like she was making that's what she was trying to do, make the learning visible, but she did it in a way that connected me and felt me. I just saw my daughter in this, and so we talked about you, and then you shared about the possibilities of report cards. So I want to take that and frame it in part 2 here and talk about teacher stress and report cards.
Yeah, that's...
Because a lot of people will hear that and love it. As a parent, I think any parent would probably be nodding their head that that's what they want from a report card. They want to have a real, feel that you know the child, really know your child. Teachers, so there's many that embrace that, and I actually always did. I think it's actually my age, to be honest with you. I came from the era where we were trained to write starting from the student, the child, and the whole accountability movement framed us to write from outcomes, right? And that's where the outcome banks and all those things sort of came from. So, and I truly don't know if it's just my training or if it's, but I know I've taught teachers around reporting, and some of them find it very difficult to do that, right? It seems very counterintuitive, I think, to working right straight from the outcomes. So how do we, so I'll often hear, I'll often hear teachers saying, yes, great, so they'll like that, but they feel this incredible amount of stress about writing that kind of a report card, because you have to really know the student, right? Or it's perceived as being more work.
Yes.
And how can we, I think there's some things that we can do around that in terms of reframing, but in terms of even processes that can happen from above, administrators and so on, practices that can help with teacher stress and report cards. Any thoughts on that?
Aren't you putting your finger here on a very large systemic problem?
Yes.
Right. So there's so much, like we have to look at our 5 domains of stress.
Yes.
And not just look at this from, oh no, another thing that I have to do, and I have to do 30 of them, or I have to do, so there's a deeper issue here. I spent the weekend reading some work that one of Carol Ann Ween's graduate students just finished her PhD thesis. Right. Carol Ann's been very good on this. And so it does strike me that there's an important lesson here from the people that have been working on emergent curriculum, looking through that sort of holistic lens at, the overall stress load, and not simply, one element that, that in itself, doesn't it tell us too that if you're feeling stress, that somehow we presented this in the wrong ways, that what that response is telling us is that the aspect shift you're talking about is one that goes to the heart of nurturing teacher well-being.
I think it absolutely does. I realized, just thinking about having this conversation today, I was reflecting on my back goes up a little bit.
Interesting.
When I follow a whole bunch of different Facebook groups. I just I'm a fly on the wall. I like teacher groups. I like to know, it just helps me sort of feel on the pulse of things. And my back goes up a little bit around this one, and I've noticed it. That when I see people pushing back on one group that's done a report card that is more child-centered, which is what we're talking about here, just describing the, it's the kindergarten, it has to do with the Kindergarten Ontario one. And teachers will say sometimes about how much work it is, right? Mm-hmm. And how will they ever write all of these report cards? But I've noticed the response in myself, and that's because I care about the kids and so on. But in fairness, in fairness to the teachers that are saying this sort of thing, I think we reframe that.
Yes.
I
agree.
And if they're feeling that, that's legit. And we need to pay attention to what that's telling us. It doesn't necessarily mean that we throw out this type of a report card, because I don't think we do. But it's telling us we need to look at it through self-reg, because there's not enough time, or I don't know the child, or I don't have a proper training in this, or it's not somebody saying, hey, I don't think this is a good idea, or it's not possible, but for some reason it feels it puts up my barriers, it takes out
Huge
my
point.
red brain.
Yeah, huge point.
And so let's have some compassion around it. But there's little things that we could do, that we could do to, we being we collectively, to, I mean, I think there's all sorts of things about creating extra time for teachers to write report cards. But whether it's also exploring this with a self-reg lens to really understand what are the real stressors here. And, and finding that common ground where somebody who totally agrees with the kind of report card I'd love to see, and somebody who thinks it's the complete opposite type of report card that we need, come together and say, okay, we all care about kids. We're all actually in this, and we're just looking at it from different lenses, and rather than that kind of, this is the right, that's the right sort of tug of war.
I think that's just awesome. In self-reg, we're always asking why and why now.
Why and why now?